They took one glance at you and decided you were safe to ignore, too quiet, too emotional, too gentle to be dangerous. They misread your silence as confusion, mistook your kindness as compliance, and assumed your loyalty was a leash they could tug whenever they pleased. You let them, not because you were weak, but because you were calculating. You watched, remembered, took notes in silence while they bragged, mocked, and dismissed you as disposable. They underestimated you. And now, the story has flipped. Now they're watching you win. Not loudly, not vindictively, but with a steady, unshakable pace that renders them speechless. You didn't come back with fire, you came back with focus. And that's what unsettles them most. Their judgment of you was never about you, it was a mirror. They saw only what their insecurities could handle, and you, being depth in a world of surface, threatened them without speaking a word. They needed you small to feel tall, needed you uncertain so their confidence could stand. You gave them the illusion. You let them play superior while you did the internal work. They thought they were running laps around you while you were in solitude, but what they didn't realize was that you were building, quietly, ruthlessly, with intention sharper than any insult they ever threw. And now the scoreboard is starting to show the truth. Not in numbers, in impact, in presence, in undeniable evolution. They remember the last time they saw you struggle, the cracks they mocked, the doubt they fed. But they don't know what it's like to sit in a storm and not ask for rescue. You do. You know what it's like to be overlooked, underestimated, disrespected, and to use every ounce of it as fuel. You turned their doubt into discipline, their cruelty into clarity. You didn't just survive, you studied in the ruins, and now you carry yourself like someone who's no longer asking for recognition. You don't need it, you embody it. And that's the part they never saw coming. Psychologically, people underestimate what they can't quantify. And you're intangible. Your resilience isn't loud. Your power doesn't announce itself. You didn't come through the front door asking for a seat at the table. You built your own, and now people are watching from the windows, trying to understand how you got here without them. The truth is, their absence was your liberation. Every room they shut you out of taught you how to build from the ground up. And now that you're standing tall, they finally understand. You were never weak. You were quietly unstoppable. They tried to reconcile the version of you they mocked with the version of you that now has gravity. And they can't, because they never took the time to know you. They just assumed. That's the thing about assumptions. They're blind, built on ego, propped up by ignorance. You shattered all of that with presence alone. You don't need revenge. Your consistency is humiliation enough. You didn't return to show them. You returned because you never needed them to begin with. And now they watch as everything they said you couldn't do becomes your reality. You don't talk about it. That's what ruins them. You're not out here posting, bragging, or revisiting the past. You've evolved beyond the need to explain. You don't want them to notice. You don't care if they notice, but they do. And that burns more than anything. Because nothing is more haunting than watching someone thrive after you counted them out. Nothing cuts deeper than realizing the person you played small in your story became too large to fit your fiction. That's what you've become. Too real to deny, too powerful to control, too focused to derail. You owe them nothing. Not a response, not a mention, not even a side glance. Your path now is vertical. Their names don't echo at these heights. The air is thinner here. It demands lungs built from pain and vision and years of climbing in silence. That's what you have. While they were building personas, you were building muscle. Mental, emotional, spiritual. They can't fake this level. They can't buy it, and they certainly can't rewind to stop it. The win was never the goal. It was the byproduct of becoming everything they swore you'd never be. Now when you walk in a room, they feel it, the shift, the gravity. They look, then look away, not out of shame, but out of fear. Fear of being seen by someone who knows them without speaking. You've become that mirror now, the one that doesn't distort, doesn't argue, just shows. And while they scramble for relevance, you move with purpose. You're not here to prove anything. You're here to build, and you are, brick by brick, day by day. No shortcuts, no applause, just work and wins. Quiet, compound, unavoidable. Let them watch. Let them sit in the awkward silence of realizing they bet against someone who never needed their approval to begin with. That's the lesson. That's the sting. You don't have to win for them to lose. Your piece is loud, your detachment louder, and your progress, it's deafening. They underestimated you because you weren't performative, because you weren't desperate, but now they understand. The ones who move in silence move the farthest. They think your wins are recent because they're finally hearing the echo. What they don't realize is that the echo didn't come from a new victory. It came from years of buried work finally making noise. You didn't arrive here by accident. You've been climbing in silence, laying brick after brick, while they laughed, slept, or watched you from a distance with disbelief. Your wins aren't loud because they're new. They're loud because they're undeniable. Because now, even your silence has weight. Even your stillness radiates pressure. And that noise they hear, that's not you speaking. It's the sound of everything they ignored becoming too real to dismiss. You never needed a spotlight. You were building under pressure, testing every foundation, preparing your life to be unshakable. You weren't interested in proving anyone wrong. You were devoted to proving yourself right. You didn't post the failures. You didn't explain the tears. You didn't broadcast the losses. But they were there, stacked behind the curtain like ammunition. You absorbed every misstep. You studied every betrayal. You turned setbacks into blueprints. And now, as your name moves through rooms without you, as your energy carries weight without introduction, they can't deny what they see, no matter how hard they try to reframe your journey. They thought your evolution was sudden, but there's nothing sudden about discipline. There's nothing instant about healing. You walked through fires they never acknowledged, rebuilt through nights they never witnessed, and sacrificed comforts they wouldn't dare part with. And now, you glide where they stumble. You speak when it matters. And when you do, it lands. Not because it's loud, but because it's back. That's the part that wrecks them. The reality that your presence now speaks for you. That everything they tried to minimize has become the metric. You are no longer compared to them. You're studied by them. Psychologically, people don't deny what they don't recognize. They deny what threatens them. Your wins aren't threatening because they're flashy. They're threatening because they're proof. Proof that staying silent doesn't mean staying stagnant. Proof that discipline without applause still pays. Proof that someone can be underestimated for years and still outrun everyone in the end. Your rise calls them out without you ever needing to mention their name. It reminds them of how much time they wasted watching instead of working, doubting instead of building, talking instead of transforming. They try to dim the room you walk into with forced narratives, sideways glances, and outdated stories. But your energy hits harder than gossip. You don't walk in to be seen. You walk in because you belong. That's the difference. You didn't sneak in through a crack in the wall. You built the door. They want to believe this is temporary, that you'll fall back into obscurity, but they feel the permanence in your posture. Your wins have gravity now. They don't float away. They stay. They root. And that's what makes them loud. They echo in every space they once said you didn't belong in. They'll say you changed, that success made you different. But they weren't there for the versions of you that were too broken to show up. They didn't see the nights you cried yourself into consistency, the mornings you rose without motivation but moved anyway. They didn't hear the conversations you had with yourself in the dark. That's why your light offends them now, because it was never handed to you. It was fought for, earned, crafted in silence. And now that it's shining, it demands witness. Not because you're bragging, but because the results can no longer be ignored. You don't wear your success like a trophy, you wear it like armor. Quiet, fitted, heavy with memory. It protects you not just from the attacks, but from the pull to return to the version of you that waited for permission. You no longer wait. You move with precision, with intention, with the clarity of someone who has seen what the bottom feels like and chose to climb anyway. Your wins are echoes of that climb, each one louder than the last. Each one making it harder for them to keep pretending they never saw your worth. Let them try to twist the narrative. Let them keep pretending your rise came out of nowhere. You don't need to correct them. The outcome already did. Your presence is the evidence. Your peace is the announcement. Your focus is the anthem. Every step forward you take now redefines the map they thought you'd be stuck on forever. And the volume they hear, that's not noise. That's consequence for betting against someone who kept building while they were busy underestimating the blueprints. So now you move without apology, without hesitation. You know what your wins cost, and you know why they sound like thunder to those who mock the rain. You don't shrink anymore to make others comfortable. You expand, you grow, you dominate your lane. And you do it with so much calm, so much control that it terrifies them. Because when wins become undeniable, silence becomes power. And you, my friend, are the loudest in the room without saying a word. They used to walk past you like you were background noise, a character in the corner, a footnote in their storyline. They overlooked you easily, carelessly, shamelessly. Your silence made them comfortable. Your patience made them smug. They saw your humility and mistook it for irrelevance. They didn't hear you roar, so they assumed you had no teeth. But quiet is not the same as weak. Stillness is not the same as small. And now, the tides have turned. Now they watch you move and they freeze. They hear your name and it catches in their throat. They overlooked you. Now they overthink you. Every step you take is a riddle. Every glance is a message. You don't even need to speak. Your presence haunts them, more than your absence ever did. They used to speak over you, cut through your thoughts like your words had no weight. You remember it. The way they interrupted your ideas, hijacked your moments, dimmed your glow with mockery and cheap praise. You let them, not because you believed them, but because you were busy becoming. And becoming requires silence. It requires the discipline to let small minds carry on while your big vision simmers underground. They didn't know what you were building while they were laughing, but they see it now, and they're nervous because the same person they ignored is now the one they cannot predict. You were once an afterthought. Now, you're the question they can't stop asking in their own head. Psychologically, we fear what we can't read, and you've become unreadable. Not fake, not masked, just evolved. Too fluid to be boxed, too grounded to be rattled. They thought they had you figured out. That's why they never took you seriously. But now that you've stopped performing, stopped justifying, stopped apologizing, they're lost. They can't map your behavior, can't trace your emotions, can't manipulate what they no longer understand. You've stopped being familiar, and that alone is enough to unnerve anyone who thought your predictability was permanent. Your change is their chaos. They overthink every interaction now. Did you mean that text a certain way? Why didn't you respond faster? Why were you so calm? They analyze your tone, your timing, your trajectory. Because they feel what they won't say out loud. They missed it. They missed the moment you became someone no longer accessible. They missed the version of you that waited, that begged to be understood, that over-explained everything. And now that version is gone. Replaced by someone who owes them nothing, someone who has nothing left to prove. You walked out of their expectations and became a question mark wrapped in fire. You aren't unkind, you're just untouchable now. You don't seek revenge, you exude consequence. You're not holding grudges, you're holding standards. That's the difference, and it drives them crazy. Because people who once held power over your self-pity can't cope when that image starts growing in ways they can't control. They try to find cracks in the new you, but you've sealed every one with self-respect. And when they ask, "Who does this person think they are?" you smile, because you know exactly who you are. And you also know they don't. Let them overthink it. Let them write imaginary conversations in their heads. Let them stay up wondering if you saw through them all along. Because you did. You saw it. You saw the dismissiveness, the backhanded remarks, the way they kept you just close enough to use but never close enough to praise. You saw it. And still, you said nothing. Not because you didn't feel it, but because you were choosing yourself quietly, and now that choice has evolved into power. Now your boundaries have become walls, and they can't find the door anymore. They tell others you changed, but the truth is they just never took the time to look at you in the first place. They only saw what was useful, what was safe, what was familiar. Now all of that is gone, and all that's left is you. Fully formed, fully aware, fully out of reach, and it unsettles them. Because the same person they overlooked has become the standard they can't seem to reach. You've rewritten the rules, not for the world, for yourself. And anyone who doesn't evolve with you is left behind, standing in the ruins of the expectations they placed on your old self. Let them sit in that discomfort. Let them dig through old memories trying to find clues. You're no longer part of their script, so they're stuck reading lines that no longer apply. That's the real loss. Not that you left, but that you stopped explaining why. Your quiet departure became a statement louder than any confrontation could have been, and now they overthink everything. Not because you're playing games, but because they know the game ended the moment you stopped participating. This is your era, not of proving, but of being. You don't chase clarity anymore, you embody it. Your name doesn't just circulate now, it lingers. And the irony? The people who once couldn't remember your worth can't seem to forget you now. They overlooked you when it was convenient, but now that you've become unignorable, they replay the past with fresh regret. That's what happens when a ghost turns into a force, when a whisper turns into a wake-up call. They overlooked you. Now they overthink everything about you, and they always will. They thought you were forgettable, disposable, background noise in their symphony of self-importance. You were convenient until you weren't. Available until you weren't. Soft until you sharpened. They dismissed you, not out of cruelty, but out of arrogance, because the most dangerous kind of person is the one who underestimates others to inflate themselves. They mistook your patience for passivity, or your silence for lack of presence. They didn't see you because they didn't want to, because if they looked closely, they'd have to acknowledge something they weren't ready for. You were always more than they allowed themselves to admit. And now, the worst pain is unraveling them from within. The pain of watching someone they once dismissed become someone they can no longer ignore. They never expected to see your name in rooms they weren't invited to, never imagined your energy commanding the kind of respect they always secretly craved. You were supposed to be the one they left behind, the one who faded quietly, the one who never stopped waiting for their approval. But now you move differently. You carry gravity, you speak less, but everything you say shifts the atmosphere. And they're watching. Maybe not publicly, maybe not obviously, but obsessively, because the wound you left isn't from vengeance, it's from contrast. The contrast between who they thought you were and who you actually became. The gap between how they treated you and how the world now sees you. Psychologically, nothing haunts the ego more than miscalculation. When someone invests in a false narrative about another person and reality comes to collect, the shame isn't just external, it's internal collapse. They have to sit with the memory of you, how they used to talk over you, laugh at your dreams, roll their eyes when you dared to shine. And now they're surrounded by reminders of your glow. Every step forward you take is a confrontation they didn't sign up for. You're not just succeeding, you're exposing them. Quietly, without ever mentioning their name. They scroll through your wins like they're crime scene photos, evidence of a mistake they can't undo. They try to comfort themselves by rewriting history, saying you were lucky, saying you changed, but they know the truth. You didn't change. You returned to yourself. The version of you they never had the patience or vision to see. That version is now untouchable, unreachable. And their past treatment of you has turned to quicksand. The more they try to explain it, the more they sink into the truth they tried so hard to suppress. You walk past them now with calm detachment, not anger, not spite, just clarity. And that clarity slices, because you're not holding a grudge, you're holding power, and they can feel it. In the way you don't acknowledge them, in the way you don't entertain their stories, in the way your silence has become a verdict, not a punishment, but a proclamation. You're beyond reach, not because you blocked them, but because you outgrew the dimensions they tried to confine you to. And they know it. They see it every time your name comes up in a room they no longer control. 'Tis a special kind of suffering, watching someone you minimized become a force. You weren't supposed to rise. You weren't supposed to be remembered. But now, even your absence is presence. They hear echoes of you in every conversation that demands growth. They see glimpses of you in every person who doesn't need external validation to be undeniable. They feel you in their silence, in their shame, in their sudden understanding that they gave away something valuable because they couldn't recognize brilliance that didn't come packaged in performance. I can't unsee you now. You walk in rooms and silence follows, not from fear, but from respect. A respect that no longer needs explanation because your life speaks louder than their old commentary. You never asked for the spotlight. You just refused to dim yourself for people who couldn't handle the glare. And now that you shine without apology, they're the ones squinting, trying to understand how the person they once overlooked became the standard they can't match. Let them overthink it. Let them spiral. Let them attempt to match your energy with mimicry and empty words. It won't work. Because what they lack can't be copied. It had to be earned. You earned it through rejection, solitude, resilience. You forged it in silence, in doubt, in moments where no one clapped and you showed up anyway. That's why you're untouchable. That's why they're haunted. Not by your wins, but by the memory of who they were when you needed support the most. This pain they feel now, it's not punishment, it's revelation. They're finally seeing the truth of who you were, and the truth is ruthless. It offers no refund for dismissed potential, no second chance to witness what they failed to honor the first time. You are that lesson now, walking, rising, untamed, the embodiment of everything they chose not to believe in. And now, the one thing they tried to delete is the only thing they can't stop watching. This is your power, not just in what you became, but in what you refused to stay. They dismissed you, and now they live in the shadow of that dismissal. You don't need to gloat. You don't need to speak. Just keep walking, because every step forward you take is a scream in their conscience. The worst pain they'll ever feel is watching you shine, knowing they had the chance to stand beside you and blew it.